Welcome to Toy Polloi. Parental guidance. This video contains scenes of Lego destruction.
Hello and welcome to Toy Polloi and part 2 of the restoration of a vintage G.I.Joe Action Force Zartan and Swamp Skier. Now in part 1 we've mainly worked on the figure, getting the two Zartans I have here back together, and in this episode we're going to work mainly on the Swamp Skier because as you can see I have quite a lot of parts here and there are a few very common issues and things that are broken on them that we are going to fix. So let's crack straight on with getting the Swamp Skier back up and running, and the first thing we're going to do is just sort through all the parts and see what I've got. I think I have enough for about 2 Swamp Skiers, so we'll try and get 2 of them working. So let's organise what we've got and see what we can make. After a quick bit of organising, you can see this is enough for 2 Swamp Skiers, and as I said they do have some fairly common issues. If we look at the front skis on this one, you can see the top little sort of back peg has snapped off of that, so these skis won't stay in place. And then of course we've got handlebars. These handlebars here have one side of the clip missing, and if we look at this one here, these ones have both sides of the clip missing, so we need to make something to hold those in place. And obviously this one is missing stickers, so I want to make some replacement stickers for that. This front of the bike has the stickers and they're actually in reasonable condition. You can see one is coming away, that just needs re-gluing, so we'll stick that back on. I think I'm going to leave that one with these original stickers on because it's quite nice to have that. It looks like I also have one version of the G.I.Joe Swamp Skier here. As you can see, this has the different stickers with the sort of little, I don't know what that is, something with a stinger on it on the side there. So I might try and restore a third one at some point if I can find enough pieces for it. But if you look at the back there, that is all the spare pieces I have. So I've got lots of skis and a few other bits, but not enough for a third Swamp Skier. So we're just going to restore these 2 that we have here. So what we'll do now is actually just put these basically together and then start fixing the pieces that we need to fix. And I think the first one we're going to do is this front ski section, as that should be a fairly quick and easy thing to mend. Now the front skis have this tiny little peg that sticks out the sort of the top of the main peg, and that's what holds the skis in place. If we get a Swamp Skier here, you can see you put the skis in the wrong way round and there's a sort of similar shaped hole that the whole mechanism goes into, so you push that in there and then rotate these skis round and that stops them coming out. Now obviously what happens is a child or someone puts these in, and when they try to pull them out they just pull them out and that breaks off the peg. So you can see there the top part of that peg is missing, which means when you drop these skis in nothing is there to hold them in place. These ones actually do fit reasonably well even without that, but I think that's an easy thing to fix, so we're going to do that straight away. And all you're going to need is a pin vise. Now this is a tool that I've shown you quite a few times in other restorations. You can buy these very cheaply and they come with various size drill bits. I've put in the correct drill bit at the moment because what we're going to do is I have a paper clip here. Now this is a plastic coated paper clip, which is why it's green. You could just use a normal paper clip and paint it, but for ease of doing this today I found a green one which doesn't match perfectly but it will do the job. And we're going to drill a very tiny hole in the top of the existing peg there and insert a piece of paper clip in and then cut that down so that it's the same length as the other one, and that should work very nicely. It might need a little bit of glue in it just to hold it in place, but that's what we're going to do. So I've got the pin vise here and I'm now going to drill a very tiny little hole. And this is quite a fiddly job because it's so small, and it might be that I want to drill a smaller hole first, and I think that's actually what I'm going to do. This is the correct size drill bit for the paper clip, but I think drilling a sort of guide hole first will make my life a lot easier. So I'm going to swap this out and drill a small hole and then we'll make it bigger to this size. So you can see here I've now got a much smaller drill bit in place, and that will enable me to drill a guide hole first. Sometimes it's worth doing an extra little bit of work to make the whole job easier. So you can see I can drill a hole quite easily with that small pin vise head. You can see now there's a tiny little guide hole, and I'll swap this over for the larger drill bit and then we can drill the proper size hole and insert the paper clip. So this is now the larger drill bit, and I've got a bit of guidance to go to use that hole as a sort of starting point. Even then it's still going to be a bit tricky. There you you go, you can see there's now a hole the right size in the top. So what we can do now is we'll take this bit of paper clip, just check that it actually fits in there, which it does quite nicely. So I'm going to cut a small length of this and we can glue it on and see if it works. The glue has now had time to dry, so we can check that this actually works. So if we turn the skis round so that they're facing the wrong way, we can slot those in like so and rotate them, and now they're held in place really firmly. And again, if to take them out we do exactly the same, just rotate them round and it should all come out, which it does. It seems to be working quite well. I think the glue's not quite gone off there, but certainly is going to do the job, so I'll let that set fully. Now obviously sometimes the whole of that peg is missing and you could actually just make a replacement from scratch. You can see I've done something sort of similar here. This is actually using some 2mm styrene rod that I picked up for another project, and I drilled a hole in the back and just sort of slotted it in. I've not really painted this very well at the moment because I was just doing a little test, but it does actually do the job just as well. So if you're missing the whole of the rod, you can replace that as well, but it seems that most often it's just this top peg that is missing. In part 1 I did mention that I would show you another way of reattaching Zartan's legs if your O-ring had already snapped and you didn't have the O-ring inside to be able to pull a piece of string through, and this is what I'm going to show you here. Now this Zartan, the O-ring was completely missing, so on this one what I've done is I've drilled a very small hole into his body using the pin vise and a very small drill bit, and I have inserted one of these very tiny eyes from a hook and eye set. Now this eye measures, I think the top sort of diameter is about 4mm. You can pick these up very cheaply. I've used them for other projects, and all you've got to do is then screw that into the hole. You can see it's screwed in quite neatly. I didn't bother showing this on camera because it's quite fiddly to do and sort of show at the same time, but you can see there's an eyelet there. And then what I've done again is just threaded a piece of cotton through that eyelet, and we can do exactly the same process that I showed you before by threading a piece of elastic through that eyelet and using the eyelet to attach the legs to the body. So I'm just going to tie this piece of cotton onto this elastic and we'll thread it through and we'll put the figure back together again. You can see exactly what I mean. So I've just tied the elastic onto the thread. I do that off camera because it's quite fiddly. I can now pull this bit of elastic through the eyelet. There you go, like so. We can get rid of the piece of cotton because we don't need that anymore. So I'll just cut that off. So now with that elastic through the eyelet, we can start threading the body back together exactly how I showed you in the previous episode. So I'm just going to push the elastic through the pelvis and we'll hook it onto the legs. So it's done like that. And you want to sort of keep everything a little bit under tension so that when you pull this all together, the legs stay in place and everything is hooked on. So I'll just do that. Grab both bits of elastic, start pulling them taut, and now we can tie a knot again, and you just sort of tie a knot and pull the elastic as tight as you can, and then we'll tie a second knot, again tie that really tight. You can cut the two ends off. Remember just to leave these slightly longer, like so, and those can sort of pop up into the body, and there you have a Zartan all back together, and that's one that didn't have an O-ring at all. And you can see the eyelet holds it really quite nice and firmly, and that's a very good easy way of fixing it. And again on this one you can see I've actually repaired the front of the pelvis because it had snapped off again. So that's another Zartan up and ready to get on his swamp skier. Now we can move on to the most tricky bit, which is these handlebars, and they are a very tiny piece that is just designed to break. You can see this is the clip that holds onto the bike, and there should be two of these sort of lower pegs, one on either side, and those clip into these little holes on the front. Now if you've got one with just one side of the peg broken, I would suggest you just leave it like that because it does hold in place enough and it doesn't fall off and it works. So on this one I'm just going to leave it as it is because it does the job, but quite often they look like this where both of the pegs have snapped off, and using this we should be able to make a replacement. So this is the one that we're going to try and fix today. Now if I just take out the one with the unbroken side, you can see we need to make something that has sort of two prongs that come down that go into these holes. Now I've been having to think what we could use, because obviously it's fairly small and fairly fiddly, but I reckon we can use a piece of Lego. Now this is my sort of pot of Lego bits that I use for fixing most things, and it has some very common and useful pieces in it, and one of my favourite pieces to use is this Lego aerial or antenna, and I think we can use that. The bottom of it looks like it should work quite nicely, so that is what we're going to use as the basis for making this little replacement bracket. So if we take a closer look at the little holes that this has got to fit into, you can see there are two square holes, and if I hold up the piece of Lego you can see it's just about the same diameter, which is why I think this should work quite nicely, but it's not going to look like this in the end. So the first thing we're going to do is start modifying this. And I have a knife here. I'm just going to cut off the front and back of this lower section, and we'll see what the cross section of that looks like, because I think that is what we can use. So get the knife here, just cut down. Now Lego is pretty easy to work with, which is why I like using it to make these parts. It's very cheap and easy to get, and it's also very nice and easy to cut. You just need a knife and a pair of plastic nippers, and you can sort of modify it quite easily to make all sorts of things. So you can see there, by cutting the front and back off of the bottom of that aerial, we've got something that already looks a little bit like the missing piece, so I'm certain this is going to work. So we can just test, see if this fits. It doesn't quite yet, but it looks like it will. I've just got to trim a little bit more off. Make these sides a bit thinner. And we can see if that goes in. Almost, just a bit thick on one side. That's not bad actually. That looks like that will go in. So there's a little bit more modifying, and I think I can make something out of that. So I'm going to do that off camera and we'll see what we can come up with. I've done a little bit more work, and you can see that's what I've ended up with. Lego is pretty forgiving. You can do quite a lot to it. So I've trimmed it, and I've used a file just to file out the middle section a bit more. And then I've also bent the two sort of outer pegs in a little bit, just using a pair of pliers. So if I bring in a front of a Swamp Skier, you can see that clips in pretty well. It's not clipped in sort of fully, but it certainly holds in place, and I think that's the best we can hope for. So now we can attach this to the remains of the original handlebars that we have here. And again, I'm going to use a similar technique to what I did earlier. So I'm going to chop the top of this off, just using a pair of plastic nippers, like so. So we just end up with the bracket section, because that's really the only piece that we want. And I'm going to drill a very tiny hole into the centre of that. And I've already drilled a small hole into the bottom of these handlebars. I'll insert a piece of paper clip into that, and then I'm going to stick that on, and we'll see how that works, and it will end up looking something like this. I'm also going to give it a little coat of paint, because obviously at the moment this is black and it will stand out, so it'd be nice if it was green. But I reckon by the time we've got all of that done, we'll have some handlebars that should hold in place. And here is the final thing. You can see that's now glued in. You can see there's a tiny little piece of paper clip drilled through there, and I've just glued them on with super glue. I didn't have the exact shade of green, so I've just done it sort of army green at the moment, and I think that will look pretty reasonable once it's in place. At a future date I'm going to buy a better colour green, but that does work. And you can see I've not actually painted all of it, because most of it's just going to be hidden, but I think that will work really well. So here is a Swamp Skier without handlebars. And we're going to clip those on. Look, nice. They hold on pretty well, and you can always remove them as well, which is the idea with the Swamp Skier, that everything comes apart. So yeah, I'm pretty pleased with how that works. I think they're actually held in place just as well as the original ones, and certainly looks the job. And by the time we've got all the stickers on this, it's going to look like a nice finished vehicle. So I think that will do the job. Obviously the green is slightly too sort of army green there, but for the moment that will do. Next time I'm down the model shop I'll buy something a bit more vibrant. But I think for the moment that looks pretty nice. With the stickers I'm going to save the ones on this vehicle, because there's only one that's actually coming off. You can see that it's just slightly sort of come loose at the ends, and that's easy enough to fix just with a bit of Pritt stick. So I've got some Pritt stick here, and if you just get a screwdriver or something, you can carefully take some of the Pritt stick onto that, and we can wipe that onto the area that we need without getting the rest sort of too messy, and then stick those stickers back down. It's not the most complicated of jobs, this one, but it's certainly worth doing. Just makes the vehicle look a little bit nicer. Just get a little bit more glue on that one, so a little bit more Pritt stick onto there, and then we can stick that down. See, that makes a massive difference. Even though the sticker's a little bit worn, it just looks nicer that it's now nice and flat. But for the other bike, obviously, it is missing all of the stickers. So I'm going to go into Photoshop and try and recreate these early Action Force versions of the stickers. But I think I'm going to make a few custom ones as well, because there's certain parts of this vehicle that just look a little bit plain. The bike is the only part that's supposed to have stickers on it, according to the Action Force instructions. But obviously you have this little crate, and that's got some big panels on it. So I think I'm going to make some nice sort of large Cobra emblems to go on the sides of this. Now I know he wouldn't actually have Cobra emblems on here because he's in disguise when he's using this crate section, but I just want to do something that makes it look a little bit more interesting. I'm also going to take some sort of guidance from the US G.I. Joe version, which has some little warning stickers sort of stuck on various parts of the skis and parts of the bike, and I'm going to make some that sort of look a little bit more British, but again, little warning stickers that we can stick on certain areas, maybe some onto this jet part, and again some onto the skis and just around a little area. So I'm going to make a few custom stickers just to sort of spice this up a bit and make it look a little bit more interesting. So let's go into Photoshop and I'll make some new stickers. And after about half an hour in Photoshop, this is what I've made. As you can see, this is a full replacement set of the original sticker, so you get the two stripes that go either side of the sort of front portion of the bike, and the smaller Cobra symbols that go on the back, and then this little targeting thing that goes, I would say, on the sort of gas tank section. But you can also see that I've made some larger Cobra symbols, which I want to put on the crate. I think they'll look quite nice. And just a few little warning ones. I've made ones that say caution and warning. Not sure if you can see those there. And I've also made these little ones which are based on the ejector sort of warning sign that you get on aeroplanes and sort of cockpits for aeroplanes. I just thought they're quite a nice shape, and I think those will look quite good. Again, just sort of dotted around, maybe some of those sort of around this section, just to give it a little bit more depth, because I think it's a shame that it has so few stickers on the Action Force release. So we'll get these all cut out and start applying them to the vehicle. This is printed onto glossy sticky back printer paper. You can easily buy this anywhere. I don't buy any particular brand, it's just whatever I find cheapest. And this file will be available for free on toypolloi.com. So if you want to do this to your own Swamp Skier, you can go and get the file now. Let's get cutting. I've now got all the stickers cut out, and they are quite fiddly because they're so small, but you can do it. And the way I'm going to apply these, I've got some very sharp pointed tweezers. I think that's going to be the only way that I can actually get these onto the vehicle, just because they're so small. And a little bit of patience. So start with the easier ones. We'll get the stripes in place. And just work our way around until we've got something that we like the look of. I've got really no sort of definite plans as to where the warning stickers go. I'll just see what looks good. Immediately makes quite a big difference. Let's put on the little target one. And here we go, here is the finished Swamp Skier. This is the one with the added stickers. I think the little stickers do make quite a big difference. I put one of the little ejector ones there on the front, a little warning sign on the side there, and if we turn it around I put another warning sign on the engine. Oh, of course it has the original stickers, the little lines there, the cobra symbol and the little targeting thing there. I just think those extra stickers just give it a little bit more sort of detail that makes it look a lot nicer. And again, if we look at the sled section, I put some extra skis on this just because I've had a couple of spare pairs of skis. The cobra symbols make that look just that little bit more fancy, and I've also put a little warning or sort of caution sign there just next to the skis, again just to add that little bit more detail. I could have put a few more stickers on this, but I don't want to go over the board on it. It's nice to keep it as sort of a simple design, but just a little bit more detail than it had originally. And then the one here on the right, as you can see, is just the one with the original stickers on it, so quite plain looking. It only has a grand total of 5 stickers in all. And then if we look at the crate section, again you can see this doesn't have anything on it. Again, I've put some extra skis on here just so you can see what it looks like, but it should really just be the box on its own. So that's the end of my restoration of this vintage Action Force G.I. Joe, Zartan and Swamp Skier. So I've taken a pile of bits and bobs and turned them into 2 quite nice looking Swamp Skiers. One of them is going to go on display here. I'm not sure what I'll do with the other one, but I think I'm going to keep my custom one because that certainly is the nicer looking one now. But I've got a few little bits to play with, and I've got some spares, so if I find more parts I might make another one. I also want to say a big thank you to JJ Adams, who very kindly lent me a Zartan to fix, and that's the one that I've shown you in this episode, fixing with the O-ring missing. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching Toy Polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow Toy Polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.